So there's some people out here dead in their sins, man. Doing some really atrocious stuff. Living some really, really dark lives. And when you talk to them about God, they say that God will understand. And if you're one of those people, I want to say to you that living in sin and thinking that when you stand before God on the day of judgment, God is just going to let you slide because he understood or he understands why you sin, how you sin, and this, that, and whatever, and he's going to feel sorry for you. You're very mistaken. What God is going to understand on that day is that you don't qualify to be in his kingdom because you never exercised any grace, any mercy, any kindness, any love for your enemies, any forgiveness, any holiness, any righteousness. He's going to understand that in this world, you never really lived, like a child of God. That's what God is going to understand. That you never represented him. You never lived like Jesus. You never followed Jesus. You never exhibit any kind of godly trait and quality, which is a requirement. I mean, this is why God said you must be born again. You can't live and die as a regular human being. You have to, somewhere along the line, you have to be born again in order to enter into God's kingdom. Because, there's going to come a time when there's only two places to be. It's going to be in the lake of fire with Satan and his people, or to be in the kingdom of God with God and his people. Christ and the apostles and, all the saints that have lived and died as, true followers of Jesus Christ. Yeah, there's only going to be two places to be. Like, imagine this. Imagine that God decided on the day of judgment, okay, I'm going to let you in, a sinner, unrepentant, unforgiven, you haven't been born again, you're still a sinner, begging God for a break. And God decided to give you that break. Sin is contagious. All right, we see how it is. We see Eve sin, and she influenced her husband into sinning, and it passed on to the kids, and to Cain and Abel, and so on and so forth. We see how sin came into the world, right, from one person all the way through. So we know that sin is contagious. So just imagine that God let one sinner into his kingdom. What is it going to do? It's going to be like leaven. It's going to spread throughout the whole kingdom. Yes, because, just like here on earth, God allow you, freedom of choice, and people choose to sin. The pleasure of sin. Righteousness, holiness, living like Jesus is hard. Sin is easy. So if God was to let one sinner into his kingdom, it's like starting all over again. Gonna be So God is not dumb. Just like you wouldn't let a rattlesnake just roam around in your house. God isn't going to let another sinner into his kingdom. God has no choice at the end of the day. He has set a process in place. And the process is you must come to Jesus. Jesus will teach you how to be, a child of God. And you have to accept it. And you show your acceptance by living it now. No, then it's going to be too late. If you die, it's going to be too late. The condition that you die in is a condition that you're going to be in for all eternity. God is, it's not about God understanding. That's not the credential. That's not the criteria that gets you into God's kingdom. That's not the criteria that prevents you from an eternity in the lake of fire, by the way of hell. That's not the criteria. It's not God understanding. It's because God understood that he sent Jesus Christ to die for us. Because he realized, he understood.
In 1,000 feet, turn left.
That's why he sent Jesus. So if you don't, it's just like anything else. You go to apply for a job, you got to qualify. And the employer has their qualifying standard. Right? So God has...
Turn left onto Teld Road.
His qualifying standard, to be in his kingdom. That's just the way it is. If you don't follow those process, just like your employer had a process to apply. The whole thing. It's a process.
Turn right onto Teld Road.
You wouldn't have that job today, or you can't get that job if you don't follow that process. And it's the same thing. God has a process. You can't bypass a life, trusting and obeying Jesus Christ to get into God's kingdom. There's no bypassing it. Even if you have somebody, because sometimes, we might know somebody on the job and they might put in a good word for us, but we still have to go through the process. It's just that, somebody on the inside, they will take your application. They go pick it out of the millions that they have. They'll walk it to the right person. But you still have to qualify. They're not going to give you that CEO job if you don't have CEO credentials. It's the same thing with
in 1.3 miles. Turn right onto North Berwick Drive.
You still have to qualify. You still have to be born again. No man can come to the Father except by Jesus Christ. That's what he said. Nobody can come to the Father except they come through him. Jesus is the key. He's the door. He's the gate. He's on. You can't get by. You can't climb over Jesus. You can't get around Jesus. You can't get under Jesus in order to get to the Father. It's like you trying to talk to the president. You can't get even close. You go to the White House gate. Go talk about you want to talk to the president. It don't work like that. In the same way, God has things set up. Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. You must be born again. You must be. See, Jesus today, man. There's gonna come a time. And we got to leave here, and we don't know when, we don't know how. But what we do know is it's appointed unto all of us to leave this place. It don't matter whether you're rich or poor, educated, you got to go.
Make a U-turn onto Tuckerton Road. Then turn right onto Teld Road.
And the Lord while he might be found. Jesus is readily available. Go read the book. That's the best way to know about Jesus. Go read them gospel. Don't wait for your preacher. Don't just listen to your friends or your neighbor next door.
Turn right onto Teld Road.
Get into that book. It's the Jesus of the Bible. See, because each denomination they'll preach and practice certain aspects of the gospel, certain things about Jesus. But you need to hold Christ. You need to know him for yourself. You have to develop a relationship with him for yourself. You don't know when your time is.
In half a mile, turn right onto North Berwick Drive.
Famous, tall, dark, handsome, beautiful family, beautiful home, beautiful life. Kobe Bryant didn't know, or his young daughter, they didn't know when their time was. And especially if you know that you're living in sin. You cannot afford to die.
In 1,000 feet, turn right.
So while you have the chance, get to know Jesus today. The Bible said, whoever covereth his sin shall not prosper, but whoever confess,
Turn right onto North Berwick Drive.
confess and forsake. Not only confess, gotta be open with it, and forsake. You have to turn from it.
In a quarter of a mile,
Bless up.
turn right onto North